The Flash Season 3, Episode 21, Cause and Effect. So my theory was right that Savitar, this future version of Barry, is actually a time remnant. I was right because, of course, when we went to the future version of Barry, he mentioned that he made a bunch of time remnants. All but one were killed, and I was like, well, it's going to be a time remnant. I was confused as to how that made sense, and they basically explained it through just, there is no beginning, there is no end, it just kind of is. So that's kind of their answer for it. It was just like, poof, it happens. So that's pretty much all there is to it. We just got to go with that answer. But it was cool. It was nice that they kind of did the reveal. We find out that with the crazy issue of this episode with Barry losing his memory, it's the same thing for Savitar. But unfortunately, they of course need the villain in order to do something because, it's like, well, Caitlin won't allow them to do something else. So it's just like, kind of the typical thing you expect was like, they finally got the villain. Technically, they could find a way to do it. But then it's like, nope, you have to have the villain alive in some form, or at least back to normal since he was still alive, in order for things to play out in a good way for pretty much everybody in the episode. So it's like, well, that sucks for them, but they definitely showed off some pretty interesting things. They showed with this being, well, it's hard to say because we don't really know if it's new or not. I guess technically it's not since Savitar lived through it, but him losing his memories, I guess, didn't have any sort of effect on him because like everything that's happening, he knows what's happening. So it's really crazy how they go through that, and it's like, well, he knows every single thing. And even in the beginning of this episode, which is very awesome, where Barry and Savitar like run in circles and then they charge like just a bunch of lightning. It wasn't like just one little bolt, it was like a huge wave of lightning at each other, and it just clashes and it just like destroys a part of the forest. You just see like embers and stuff. That was a great opening. But even during that conversation, Barry's like, well, I know who you are, so we're changing the future right now. And he was like, are we? And I thought that was actually really cool. It's like, okay, so they have to get to some really, really crazy stuff before they can find out exactly, what's going to be happening. So it's just very interesting to see, just anticipating how in the world they're going to make this work where Savitar can't figure it out. Like that, it's just so hard to see. And they do make a great reference to the fact that if Barry killed Savitar, it'll stop everything. And he's like, would it really? Because, like, did that really work out for Eddie? Because he killed himself. And, of course, there's a million reverse flashes running around. So that was a cool reference to, like, Legends of Tomorrow and stuff, because he was, like, the main villain in the most recent season. So that was cool. They also make a reference to finally answering the question from Legends of Tomorrow for people that actually watch it, where it was like, oh, the message from the future Barry that he sent to the team, that's what he was talking about. I was like, don't trust future Barry. And it's because future Barry is Savitar. So it was a cool way to tie that in because they kind of introduced that in Legends of Tomorrow and it never really came up. I forgot it didn't. I thought they answered it somewhere, but I was like, oh, I guess they didn't. I just forgot. But I was like, okay, well, that's a cool way to tie that in where it's like, that's what that big mystery was, and it finally got answered in The Flash. So I like some of the references they threw to the other shows, some of the examples they gave of how even Barry killing Savitar right now as a future version of a time remnant probably wouldn't make that big of a deal because, you got Reverse Flash, there are a million versions of him. You can always, he just always jumps backwards in time. And then it's just like, whatever. I mean, he's a time traveler. You can kill this more immediate version, but there's always going to be a version of him in the past that can just pop up and be like, oh, that future version died. I'll take over as like the main antagonist, I guess, as the Reverse Flash. So I thought it was cool that they kind of referenced that, where it's like, it will still happen. So I definitely thought that was a cool way to do it for sure. But I'm excited for where they're headed. They show off a little bit of stuff with Caitlin, which, and this is one of the things where it's hard to say if it matters or not, because Savitar is saying like everything, he could just be saying it just to say it, because you never really know. But if everything truly is going as it's supposed to, then the stuff with Caitlin didn't really matter in this episode, where she, Cisco, and the other, I totally forgot his name just now, but the three of them are working together, and Cisco comes up with this whole story, and for like a split second, when Killer Frost is getting on the elevator, her eyes change color, but then they change back. So it did have an effect where Cisco was able to bring up like, one of their great memories together as friends, and he even, mentions Ronnie. So it's like, okay, well, that's definitely interesting. Will it matter is the big question, because it's like, well, what is the future as Savitar knows it, and what is actually being changed? We don't really know at this point, so it's impossible to tell what's happening that's already happened and what's happening that's brand new. So we'll just have to see how it plays out. I'm sure there's, I mean, obviously they aren't going to kill off Iris, but there's got to be some things in here that we've already seen. For instance, of course, the whole thing with the scientist, all that stuff is brand new because she didn't make it until 4 years later, the trap for Savitar. So of course everything that happens with her is brand new, and we get to see her budding relationship with HR in this episode, which I thought was pretty cool. So, you know, they're both kind of silly, and they officially make the Speed Force bazooka, and I like that. I like that idea that, you know, everything's changing. So with her being, you know, like a whole character that's changing and doing things like 4 years earlier, there's a lot that can change from that. So there are a lot of things that Savitar would know, but at the same time, there's the whole question of time travel and alternate timeline memories and stuff like that. It's like, will he remember this stuff even if it's different from his original past? Like, will it alter and he remembers both timelines? There's a million different things. Like, is it going to be like Barry traveling through time, or is it like someone changed time, and because Savitar isn't within the Speed Force, he'll forget and he'll be like, oh, I only have these new memories now. So there are a million different ways that they could possibly do it. It's time travel, so at this point we kind of just have to wait and see exactly how they choose to explain it. Like with Savitar, it's just an infinite loop. It just is no true beginning, no true end, just an inexplicable happening through time travel. So still a fun episode, and I just like the way it played out. You know, it was a simple episode, to be totally honest. I feel like it was kind of just leading us up to like kind of the end of this season, but they introduced some good stuff, depending on whether or not it matters. Like I said, the stuff with Caitlin I thought was interesting. Barry losing his memory definitely led to some really funny moments, so I certainly enjoyed that in general. But, you know, that had an effect on, you know, Wally not having his superpowers and stuff, because they erased his memory, so they erase Savitar's memories and stuff like that. Well, I guess that answers my question that I just had recently, where it was like, if they make the new memories, will Savitar know them? So I guess he would. No matter what new memories are made, he'll instantaneously have them, because as soon as Barry lost his powers, so did Savitar, and then that basically meant everything he'd done didn't happen. So time travel, it's super confusing, and I'm still gonna have to look it up, because I'm like, all right, well, with that answer, I'm even more confused now as to all the weird stuff that happened with Julian when he opens up the box, like before he even went to the States. How that even makes sense now, whereas like, how did that part even get in the past? They mentioned that he went back in time to recruit people, but, you know, it's like, why would he do that? Why would he do it in that way? So I guess that's just the villain thing, where it's like, this is how it's supposed to be, because that's just how it was. So even if it doesn't make sense, that's just how it was meant to be. So I guess that's what we're gonna have to live with. But I enjoyed this episode. I'm very curious for the next episode, because somehow Leonard Snart is back. So I don't know what the heck that's supposed to be about, because this is a spoiler from like the last season of Legends of Tomorrow, but he's dead. He's supposed to be dead, at least. So unless something happened where he's a time remnant now, I don't know. Which wouldn't make sense, because he's not a speedster, unless someone can make time remnants of other people. But somehow he's working with Barry, so there's that. They need like this thing that's more powerful than like the sun in order to use the Speed Force bazooka, and it cut to a really it was a really odd ending, because it was like, okay, this stuff is happening and it's wrapping up the episode, and then it just cuts to like this really random thing where it's King Shark and he's just guarding like this little red orb, and I'm like, I'm super confused. I'm assuming, because this is how he was introduced the second time, I'm assuming that that's something Argus has, and Barry, I guess, can't just go straight to, you know, to like just hop on over to Arrow and talk with them like, hey, can we get this little sun orb deal? So for whatever reason, he has to break in and steal the orb instead of just asking for it from Argus and just getting it. But for whatever reason, he's doing that, and King Shark is there, and somehow Snart is alive as well. So I got quite a few questions as to what in the world we're supposed to be getting for this next episode. But it was certainly entertaining. Like I said, the opening was definitely awesome. I was glad that we got the official answer. Like, once it's revealed who Savitar is, we have to get the answer in the next episode. And it made sense. I was like, okay, they definitely gave us that clue that it was going to end up being a time remnant. Apparently, they gave a clue like super early on, where when Barry and Savitar first run at each other, it's like straight out of one of the comic books, where Barry fights the future version of the Flash. And in the future, the Flash wears blue and white. So it's like, oh, you know, if I read comics, I probably would have got that a long time ago, but I didn't. So, you know, I definitely enjoyed the opening, the explanation, what they seem to be leading into with Caitlin, where that might be the deciding factor into however things are supposed to play out with Iris and, you know, this future evil version of Barry. But I thought it was really cool. I like the way they explained it. I like the fact that this version of Barry becomes so evil simply due to the fact that he's a time remnant, and everyone kind of discards him, where it's like, you know, you're not the real Barry, so get that out of here. Like, we don't know how to deal with you, so we're not going to deal with you. And I just thought that was very interesting. I was like, wow, that's a pretty interesting way to have a villain show up, is that you made a time remnant, and then because everyone ignored the remnant as if, you know, it didn't exist, you're not allowed to really do that. So it was just very interesting. I was like, wow, that's kind of a cool way to do it, if I'm being totally honest. But definitely thought it was entertaining. So excited for where we're headed in this next episode. But of course, would love to know what you guys thought about this one. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, least favorite parts about it. And of course, I want to know with what they're doing as far as the Speed Force canon and some of the things that are actually changing. Because like I said, everything with the Doctor is clearly like 4 years ahead of time. I would love to know your predictions on what other elements might change that, well, I guess Savitar will be aware of everything because he'll still have those brand new memories based off of this episode of him instantaneously having no memories. All the new memories he'll have as well. But I would love to know how you guys think this might actually play out going into these last couple of episodes. I think we have 2 episodes left. I think the next one, or maybe 3 episodes. I don't really remember. I know everything's ending with, like, in this month. So I know we only got a couple episodes left, but I'd love to know your predictions on how they're going to actually end up defeating Savitar and stopping this crazy loop. And of course, I just want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.